I am here at the Lilies and Sparrows community in Harrisonburg, Virginia. And I am in the midst of some major life transitions. So I'm making this little video as a communication to many people who are coming and going, so that all can hear what I have to offer or what my concerns are, that I might get prayer and revelation and assistance from all of you. 2 Kings 5:27. Therefore, the leprosy of Naaman shall cling to you and your descendants forever. So Gehazi departed from his presence, a leper as white as snow. Statement: my selfishness, your selfishness, can bring affliction on you and your family and your people. 2 Kings 5:27. Now here's the situation. Naaman the Syrian came with gifts because he was anticipating getting healed. Elisha said, I can't take any of your stuff, man. God bless you. Just go home and remain in respect for your authority. As Naaman the Syrian left, Gehazi, Elisha's sidekick, chased after Naaman and said, oh, hey, listen, we could use this thing and that thing that you brought. And when Gehazi went back to Elisha, Elisha said, I saw you as you took those forbidden items. And he also said, therefore, the leprosy that was upon Naaman shall cling to you, Gehazi, and your descendants forever. Now, the funny thing is, Gehazi continues to be a sidekick of Elisha. And in the Hebrew tradition, he just is a helper, but he just happens to have the psoriasis eczema affliction, and it doesn't go away from him. He's still a servant of God, and he's still helping the man of God, but he's afflicted. So, how did I become afflicted with kidney failure? Here is my story. The church around us is not an intimate and tender communion gathering in a home. I needed that from the time I was 4, 5, 6 years old. I needed to hear elders coming together and being real about their dreams and goals, about their strengths and their joys, and also about their troubles and their weaknesses. But I never had that. So I was in the midst of the trouble of arousal addiction from a young age. I had discovered the fascinating pictures of naked people, and that was a catalyst for me to just flow in this whole atmosphere where people are telling stories and all this kind of stuff. I was being educated about sexual behavior through worldly literature, because my parents had never cheerfully talked with me about the feel-good and how it says 3 times in Song of Songs, do not awaken passion, love, desire before it is time. So we want to be cautious about that. And it also says in 1 Corinthians 7, since there is so much sex trouble, each person should have their own to go to when they desire the feel-good. So, in my life, God woke me up at 37 years old. And as I traveled through my life in Christianity, people were never inviting me to share my heart, to share my faults and troubles. Never. Not once was there any kind of, in my heart, in my family honesty camp, 3 times a week, Tuesday nights, Thursday nights, and Sunday mornings before other church activities, we get together and we have the truth meal, the communion time. And there's various ways to handle this. The larger the group you have, you've got to have the brothers come together and admit the state of their houses. But the most important thing is I never had a mommy or daddy or any elder ever ask, hey, are you having trouble in this area? Are you having trouble in that area? Is God saying anything to you that we should know about? Are you avoiding any of your responsibilities? And so since I never had those queries and questions presented to me, when I broke into the Christianity world through the invitation of God, it wasn't my idea, and I began touring the church mess, in no place that I went to was there invitations to clean the conscience. Nowhere, not even one place was there a regular conscience cleansing atmosphere. And I'm pretty delighted because I heard David saying Fridays is when we do our conscience cleansing time. So it's a Friday, and I'm celebrating this thing, and I'm also putting on the table the amazing warning. As I traveled through the church mess in America, since the ecclesia, the church, since the love of the ecclesia has grown very cold, no one was nurturing one another together to be real and open about the standard things that all human beings struggle with. And since there was no single people's power ministry, there wasn't special care for the ones who were walking single. And they actually joked at me when I said to them, look, I honor my marriage vow. And in the Sermon on the Mount, it says, and in Romans 7, it says, if your spouse is still living, then you're still bound. It doesn't say if you've been divorced or remarried. It says if your spouse is still alive. And then when I read Justin Martyr, he's saying, our master has taught us that since the time is so short, walking single like him is a great benefit. And if a person takes another person while their spouse is still alive, they are in a state of adultery. Well, the church itself is in such a state of adultery towards the world. Like, I have no condemnation towards people in second and third marriages, and I always ask, is the purpose of your marriage to have and shelter children and people? Because in Malachi it says, the reason why I made them male and female is I wanted to godly offspring to be raised up. So in these times of touring the church mess in America, I discovered that since the ecclesia, since the church is so cold and has not been following many of the neat details, the goodies that Jesus taught, and they just disappeared, around the Constantine era and really weren't brought back. As I would go through, I found myself in close relationship to sisters over the years that literally felt like the only real church that I had that I could be really real and honest with. And in one of those circumstances, back in 2008, 9, 10, something like that, I had a wonderful relationship with an amazing, insightful person, and I had no interest in having intimacy in that relationship, and I gave in. And there was occasional intimacy. But at one point, God had been warning me. At one point, I was driving my car and I had a waking, terrifying, awake nightmare. I was driving my car and I literally had a vision of this black smoke seeping in around the doors and starting to fill the car up. And the voice that I love said, if you continue to fool around, the darkness will come and overtake you again. At that moment, I broke away, and my precious friend and I cried our eyes out. And she said, I know, this is really important for you, and, you've got to face this. I know that I've been sort of like a drug to you, even though we are family. And I took off, and I took a transformation vacation. So as I went through my life, about 6 months after this transition, I started getting these strange migraine headaches. The strange thing is I'd never had headaches in my life, and my friend had crazy, weird 3-day-long migraine headaches that wouldn't go away until after she vomited, which is a textbook case of a demonic presence leaving. And so 6 months after this relationship was set aside, I literally became under the same unclean demonic presence that she had had. And this is why I've begun this whole thing with the passage about Gehazi, because the affliction came over me that had been on her. And after I ended up going on dialysis, I realized that I had never had high blood pressure. And when they started checking me out, I hadn't realized it, but I was under extreme high blood pressure at the same time I was having these migraine headaches. And I realized that the whole thing was coming over my physiology as a package, and it wiped my kidneys out. So, that's one element. Chapter 2 is this. When I went into the rehab center that I've been working with, there's 20 of them around the country. Over the years, I've been realizing that the commercial fishermen that Jesus picked out, they were with him for 3 years straight, and they were all living on one bank account. And Paul, the super rabbi, the super scribe, he went off into the desert towns of Arabia for 3 years, and then he sneaked into Jerusalem to check and find out what he learned is the same as the 12. So it's clear to me that a 3-year break or a 3-year saturation in heavy spiritual work can actually remove demonic strongholds, can actually starve out familiar demons. And so I do teach about the transformation vacation and how awesome it is, especially for Americans, to break away from your devices, your friends, your family, even your church practices, and just be in an atmosphere where it's nonstop counsel, and you're just learning, and you're in this bubble of worship and study and people dropping their testimonies in a wonderful, creative way. And I mean, this has all been a part of my education. And